We want to take you now to Capitol Hill, where senators debating the proposed Women's Health Act that would make abortion legal.
That's right. Senator Schumer is speaking right now. This vote is expected to. We're going to go actually into the actual vote. Senators are voting right now. Let's listen in.
Mr. Shelby, no. Mr. Padilla, aye. Ms. Cortez Masto, aye.
As the vote unfolds and continues, let's bring in CBS News political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns, who joins us now from Capitol Hill. Hi, Caitlin. So, tell us what exactly, this vote has been going on for a little bit. There have been some delays. Can you tell us what exactly is happening right now?
Hey there, Tanya. Yeah, well, they're basically voting about whether to open up this bill for debate on the floor. Remember, we often talk about needing the votes to overcome a filibuster. The way a filibuster is done is basically nowadays you have to get 60 votes in order to progress a bill. So this is really a procedural vote, but they know that they don't have enough votes to move forward with this piece of legislation. They know that all of the Republicans are planning to vote against it, and many of them already have. And we also know that Joe Manchin, the Democrat from West Virginia, is not voting in favor of proceeding with this bill. So they don't have enough votes to overcome a filibuster, and they actually don't even have enough votes to pass this bill, even if they were able to overcome that filibuster, because they are missing that critical vote of support from Manchin. What is interesting about today, though, the reason that they're bringing up a bill that is destined to fail is because this is a big midterm message for Democrats. They want to be able to go to their voters and say, look, we are doing what we can up here in Congress to be able to codify Roe versus Wade into law with the anticipation of the Supreme Court likely overturning Roe and kicking the decision about abortion rights back to the states. But I've been talking to Democratic lawmakers up here about what more they can do beyond this. There is a Republican proposal from Senators Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins to codify Roe into law, but it doesn't include some of these provisions in the bill that they are considering right now that would get rid of more restrictions. So this bill that that's in consideration right now not only codifies Roe, but also does away with a lot of restrictions that we've seen passed at the state level. Things like requiring wait times, requiring, medical procedures or examinations or, ultrasounds before you have an abortion, and some other kind of, restrictions or intended impediments that have been passed at the state level. This bill would do away with that. And Republicans that I've been talking to up here say that that is just too far to go. Susan Collins, I asked her today, and she said this is a bill that just goes too far. But her bill, Democrats that I've been talking to say that that bill is too narrow. So, there's a lot of politics at play here, but, when I'm talking to Democratic lawmakers and I ask, what's next, they say what's next is essentially the midterm elections. They're saying that they need more Democrats to turn out and vote for more Democrats in the Senate so that they can go ahead and codify Roe. But I do think it's worth asking about what steps you can actually take after this. This is just a messaging bill. Democrats aren't considering the bill put forward by Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins of Maine, they're not considering that bill at all. So this now becomes a big midterm issue, and in our polling, we see that it's kind of undecided whether this could actually move voters this November. Our polling shows that 2/3 of voters say that this is not an issue that's going to mobilize them either way, but Democrats are twice more likely than Republicans to say that this is an issue that will motivate them. So in a midterm election that's all about turning out your base, this is one that Democrats hope can galvanize their supporters.
Caitlin, Vice President Kamala Harris is overseeing this vote. As we know, one of the vice president's constitutional duties is president of the Senate. Why is her role here significant?
That's right, Mola. She is not here to break a tie, but she is here to break a tie for a previous vote that they were voting on. But her presence is extremely important for Democrats because it signifies that this is a united front coming from the administration and most Democrats in Congress to push forward with this issue. The White House says that this is an issue that they have been talking about for a long time, that they have been championing for a long time. But there is this question of what more the administration can do, and there really isn't a lot at this point. And you've been starting to hear from some Democrats kind of pushing Democrats in Congress to do more and kind of questioning whether they were prepared enough for this happening. We know Republicans have been campaigning on the issue of abortion and the issue of the Supreme Court for decades. They've been able to galvanize their supporters around it. It's become an organizing principle for their party over the past several years. And so there is this question of whether Democrats were prepared or not for this to actually happen. They continue to say that, now this is reality. It's not just something that's talked about. Now it's reality. Now it could be something that mobilizes people even more. But that's what the effort around Kamala Harris is today, that visual, trying to send that message of this is an administration that is behind this piece of legislation as well.
And Caitlin, what are Democrats saying about why they wanted to make this piece of legislation so broad? I mean, I know part of the point of this vote is to get senators on record, but wouldn't it have made, from their perspective, more Republicans squirm if they had if they tried to pass a smaller piece of legislation that wasn't as far-reaching?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I've been asking lawmakers up here about this, and this is kind of what they're telling me. They say, look, they don't want to be seen as compromising on abortion rights. So they take issue with some of the way in which the other bill proposed by Republicans is just a codification of Roe and doesn't include some of these, what they call protections. What's happening here is, a lot of these restrictions, of course, have been passed at the state level. And so if Roe versus Wade is overturned, then the decision goes back to the states. And we've seen not only restrictions in these states in terms of the number of weeks at which they limit abortion or ban it altogether, but they have also put into place some restrictions that I mentioned. This legislation today also gives guidance to the courts about how to rule on abortion access. And so I talked to one Democratic senator who told me that his concern with the Republican bill is that it doesn't include that. But I still think that after this vote, it is worth asking the question, well, there are more pieces of legislation out there. Why not just take those up to at least show that you are working towards getting, broader support for codifying Roe? Because we do see majority support in the country for keeping Roe in place. But it's also interesting to kind of look at the nuances in the poll. There is support for some restrictions. And then on the other side, there is, Republicans by and large want those supporting overturning Roe want a federal ban on abortions. But Republicans in the poll don't want to go that far either. And talking to Republicans up here, the answers are mixed when you ask about a federal ban. Some saying they will go to whatever lengths needed to, preserve the ban on abortion. Others saying, look, this is a state issue and the states should be the ones to decide.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns. Caitlin, thank you for breaking it all down. Again, the Senate is voting on abortion rights here. There are no illusions here. Democrats are expecting this vote to fail.